Welcome to Watcha Makin', a podcast about sharing ideas and connecting with the maker community. Your hosts are Alex Adams of Type A Furniture and Alex Duffy of Duffy Woodcraft. Watcha Makin' is proudly sponsored by NextWave CNC.
What you making in the shop today? Yeah. Got a couple Alice's to show you the way, from the blueprints to the shavings on the floor. Pull up a stool, let's see what's in store.
Welcome to What You Making, a podcast where we talk all about what's on our bench, spotlight makers throughout the community, and remind you that today, June 10th, is National Iced Tea Day, though I prefer an Arnold Palmer if I do say so myself. Tonight's main topic is product failures. I'm Alex Duffy, and you can find me on Instagram and on YouTube at Duffy Woodcraft.
So is that to mean that today is a good day?
Today is a good day.
Yes,
it's an iced tea.
Mr. Iced Tea. Also, you didn't know this, but this was glued to my desk, and I accidentally just pulled it off, and it just pulled off the little like veneer stuff that was on there. So
I was gonna say, it looks like the desk came with it.
It's fine. It's a cheap desk, so I'm not worried about it. I just was surprised. I was just playing with it, and it actually popped off. Anyway, I'm Alex over at Type A Furniture. As we're recording this, today is actually my anniversary. So, yay.
Hey, happy anniversary. Why are we doing this today?
We were both busy anyway, so we were just going to kind of rain check on it. So we've got lots of stuff going on. So,
well, you know who else has a lot of stuff going on?
Our patrons. And for those who wish to join that patronage, go over to patreon.com/whatchamakinshow. And you'll find various tiers there to support the show. And if that's not something that you're ready to do right now, you could also share the show with friends, colleagues, or people you just want to bug.
And please leave them a review on Spotify or any of your platforms for the podcast, as it will help our podcast continue to grow. What You're Making is also proudly sponsored by NextWave CNC. If you're looking for the best CNC on the market today, look no further than a Shark CNC from NextWave. For the month of June, NextWave is running an accessory special. Purchase any new HD6 series and get the 3 horsepower spindle included with purchase for free.
3 horsepower, nice.
The big upgraded boy.
What you doing?
So, I'm back. Yay. For those who list, God, I can't. Apparently, I left for a couple weeks and can't speak. So, for those who missed last week, I was gone as well. And I've actually been out for a couple of weeks. We took a week off, and then I've been gone. I had surgery on my legs and then was just told I needed a rest. So, I figured it would be a good time just to check out of everything. I have bad genetics apparently and have varicose veins, so they took care of those. So recovery's been going well. I had lots of downtime, and then I basically went stir crazy because I'm used to working nonstop, and having to stop and not work is a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So I was going stir crazy. So ended up this last week, I did end up doing some things just light, taking lots of time to rest in between. But we had some planter boxes that some raised planter boxes that are on like metal legs and then the wooden sides, and the wooden sides have become rotten and weren't good anymore. So took them apart. I cut new cedar boards for them, re-put them back together. So my wife has a garden box for some herbs and stuff, and then I'm using one of the garden boxes, and I'm going to make a mushroom planter box. So I've got a whole bunch of mushroom spawn arriving tomorrow, and I'm going to be mixing it in there so that way I'll have mushrooms growing, the edible kind, not the psychedelic kind.
I mean, they're both edible.
Well, they are, and I like them both. But this is for the culinary side of things.
What kind of mushrooms are you getting?
The wine cap mushrooms. They're basically, they taste the same as like the brown mushrooms you get at the grocery store, but they are a red cap. So wine cap.
Gotcha.
But yeah, they're supposedly the easiest mushroom to start growing at home. And the spawn, once you get it going and set, will go for 3 years in your box. So I figured it's worth an easy investment and hopefully will last a while. So I did those, and then because it doesn't take a lot of effort because it's laser work, I actually cut a whole bunch of magnets, made a bunch of little like funny magnets from memes and little funny sayings and everything, because which I'll talk about in the selling section. I did really well at UFO Fest, and magnets again were one of the high items. And so this year is the first year that I'm going to have a regular presence at a Saturday morning market. So I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to I'm going to expand my magnet section and have a big board out front for $5 magnets, which, hopefully get some of those walk by, somebody laughs, buys a magnet. So, and then on top of that, for the booth, again, laser work, I created a magnetic booth sign for my laser. I actually was 3D printing one for the UFO Fest, and I got to the UFO Fest and immediately blew off the tent and hit the concrete and shattered into 1,000 pieces. So I didn't even get to use it, which sucked. So I was like, all right, well, I upgraded to a metal arm, and then so I made a wooden sign. So walnut back, and then I've got cherry for my logo, and it says, Pacific Northwest handmade gifts, blah, blah, and stuff, and has a QR code. So it looks really good. I've got its finishes drying on it currently, but so a light couple of weeks off, but nice few small projects to at least get me some not crazy time in my head all by myself, because nobody wants to be up here alone. Trust me. It's crazy.
Yeah, I also get stir crazy if I'm not doing something. It's easy to just get inside your own head and kind of just worry about stuff. So I feel you on that one.
Yeah, well, and when you're laid up on a couch or something, like I just sitting there like, all right, well, what can I do? I don't want to watch any more TV. I've already read a book today. Like, what else can I do? So, yeah. I first world problems, trust me, I know, but at the same time, it was just, getting a little crazy. What have you been up to?
So I finished out the rest of the laser engraved plaques.
Batting 100 today.
I know. My goodness. So those laser engraved plaques that I made for my senior runners that graduated. So I didn't get them all done for the actual graduation stuff. But let me grab them here real quick. So I had 8 total, but these are probably one of the ones that I actually like the most, how they turned out. So they
nice.
Kind of gets a little bit of reflection on here. But so I took the image, put it in, gave them the name, and then put their personal best time. So that's one of them that turned out really good. And
they're going to love that.
There's this other one. So depending on the picture, because like some of them had better pictures to choose from. So when I was converting it to line drawings, occasionally I'd have ChatGPT kind of like make some changes to the image where it was like if someone's like eyes were down or something like that, like point them in the right direction, that kind of stuff. Just very, very small, minute changes. Because we were going for that, like actually look like the person. Because if you have it like do too many changes, then it just doesn't look like the original person. So trying to convert it to a line drawing but remain the same, so that it's identifiable enough for that person, was a little bit of a challenge. And I originally wasn't going to do it because I had tried a little bit in the past with images for people, and I had mixed results. And so what I did was, as I was doing it, I just basically cropped down to the head and did a test lasering of that to see how it looked before actually relasering it, to make sure that everything looked good, because the face has the most amount of detail and is the most likely going to be the one that, like, if too many lines are too close, it's just going to look like a burned mess of just hodgepodge. So that was kind of the method that I developed, was just doing, because it only took maybe like 10 minutes to do like just the head, and that was the one that had the most spots that would potentially not look right, because when it came down to it, the rest of the lines on the body, because I just did it basically from about the hips up, roughly on all of them. It was relatively simple, the rest of it, because they were just, long flowing lines and weren't a whole lot of details. And I wasn't worried about, because they had their the numbers pinned on there, and I wasn't worried if like the spelling was weird on there or if the image looked a little bit off, because that's not really where the focus is. It's like, if you want to get something right, get the face right, and then the rest of it, kind of good enough. So I'm fairly happy with how they turned out. Some of them turned out better than others because sometimes if you don't start with like a really great image, it's hard to make it look good, especially if it's not large enough to begin with. So it's easier for your more successful runners because they generally get more pictures from like newspaper articles and whatnot. So those ones are relatively easy and you have more pictures to choose from. But then some of your runners who aren't on the higher level are a little bit more challenging. So you kind of just got to work with what you have.
You are a coach, right? You could literally just have them all line up and have them run in front of you and take a picture of each of one of them.
It's not the same.
Yeah. So I will say, that looks like cherry, right?
Yes, cherry.
Which does always engrave really well. Would you like a piece of advice or something that make it pop a little bit more?
Sure.
In the future, if you wanted, you could always, when you're burning it, do a double layer. So it burns twice. So it's double or twice as thick. And then all you hit it with a clear coat of like just spray finish. And once it's done with that, a single brush of black paint and then sand that flat again. And so it will, the black paint will stay. It's like basically doing a mask, right?
Yeah.
And that way the burned bit pops right out at you. So you don't get, when you're looking at it, when you get that shine from the cherry, it doesn't get hidden.
Oh, gotcha.
I do that a lot with magnets, because otherwise it gets, too lost.
Gotcha. Yeah. Cause I had on some of those, so I did on the image itself, I did do 2 passes at a lighter power. And so I was able to get a slightly deeper engraving without like really burning the edges and having that kind of, what's it called? It's not like flash. It's the stuff that you get like on the edge. Char. Yeah. I might be thinking of the term for when they're cutting like metal with lasers. But anyway, some of them didn't engrave quite as deep as I'd anticipated. And I think some of that is a little bit of variability on the images because originally my wife took some of them and converted them. Be like, yeah, you could use this, when I wasn't certain of what it was I was going to do. And so she had put some of them through different platforms. And so I think the line thickness varied a little bit. And I did also start using the trace function within Lightburn, because some of them had some of the issues where it's like the background isn't truly transparent and you get those kind of like random pixels that show up that it tries to engrave. So I think doing the trace function evened that out a little bit, but I hadn't done that with all of them. So if I had gotten that thickness dialed in better, I think that would make what you were talking about with doing the mask a lot better, because then it actually had something to seep into, and then you'd have room to work with to actually sand it back down. Because some of them, I think, like I didn't really sand after the fact. Like it was good enough off of the laser that I just used it as is with the finish. So yeah, I'll have to try that. I'll just have to experiment with that a little bit to use that properly so that it actually turns out how it's supposed to without a lot of extra work or sanding it down too far that I don't have that stuff. And then one of the other things that I worked on was on the NextWave, on the CNC. I put my spoil board kit that came with it, the black MDF spoil board modular kind of kit, and got that installed and then got that flattened. And so I published out my reel that I had from doing that. And that one, it was an interesting process for me because a lot of the other things that I've done in the past, either I've had already familiarity built up with the software or it's close enough to software that I've used in the past. So using Vetric for the first time, it was just a little like trying to find where stuff is and how it works and all that stuff was a little bit of getting used to for me, but I'm sure I'll get the hang of it even more so. But I mean, it's just as simple as drawing a rectangle and then having it cut out that that shape. So I did run into a few challenges as I was doing it that's just like new to CNC type stuff where it was like it wasn't like laying out the entire workspace, it was laying out the actual object that was on there and then zeroing it in and finding where it is on the bed as opposed to like true dimensions on the bed itself. So that was a little bit different for me, and I'm sure there's different ways to do all of this stuff. But the other thing too was that with it being the spoil board, like going to the edge of the workspace, getting it like I had forgotten that I thought I had enough overlap to do the full bit of the MDF, but I forgot that it accounts for the width of the actual bit. So it would have like, if I was going off of where the center of the bit was, I would have been fine. But since it goes off of where the edge of the bit was, which is how it's supposed to be, there was just like an ever so slightly leftover bit of the MDF that it didn't get that was like maybe a 1/16 of an inch wide that I just shaved it off later. It's like, isn't that worth me trying to like run it over multiple times to get that? I did use white chalk on it since it was black to make sure that I went down far enough, which was a good thing that I did because one of the MDF panels didn't really get too much of the flattening the first go around, so I had to run it again. I did have my
trimmed it yet, have you?
Nope, and I definitely need to because it's very apparent that it has not been.
Okay.
But one thing with that though is that I did use a cheaper surfacing bit, so it's like what's the tolerances of that bit versus like the versus needing to trim it. Plus it was an 1.5 inch wide bit, which is generally not the width of the bit you'd be using a whole lot, so it gets exaggerated like how much the tramming issue is, but it's still there. So I need to find the proper tools to do that and actually get it
IDC
trimmed.
Woodcraft has a good tramming bar and stuff for that, so
okay, yeah, I'll have to look at that. But yeah, I'm not super concerned about it at the moment because it's like that's future Alex's problem. And then I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, I definitely screwed up when I was doing my XYZ touch plate. So I had set it up. I had thought that it was going to zero the X first. So I had it set to be the side. So I do have a little spot where it and I had done this differently. I had put a different bit in because that's what someone had suggested when using a spoil board, is to just put in like a regular bit for the XY zeroing. And when I anticipated it going to the left to touch the touch plate, it went down into the MDF. And so I had hit my emergency stop to stop it from breaking off the bit. So I've got a little battle scar on there already. So, that's why the emergency stop is on there for when stuff gets screwed up. So I eventually got the touch plate working. It was just one of those things, like in my mind, I was expecting X to be zeroed first as opposed to Z. So I didn't have that right in my head off of there. So I was like, it happens. So, but yeah, the touch plate worked really nice. It's just very nerve wracking with that touch plate when the bit goes toward it, where you're like, I don't want to ruin this bit and destroy it. Because you see metal going towards metal and you're like, this is going to end poorly. It's going to look like a hydraulic press video. So
Especially because, bits are expensive and you're like, no, not my $30.
yeah, because the surfacing bit was like $20, and then the bit that I had put in was like the V-carve bit that they had included in the kit.
Yeah. Not everybody recommends this. I do, because this is how I learned. I don't use the XYZ or any touch plate. I basically do micro adjustments till the bit gets down to the surface level, and then I'll use a piece of paper to slide it. And when it's touching and it can't move anymore, it's a great way to start, because that way, when you're getting familiar with how your machine moves, but also, there's no risk of you breaking a bit on metal. It's usually the bit will go through the wood piece before it goes through and breaks off. So
yeah, and then the oh, sorry, I forgot my train of thought. Oh yeah, so I set the 0 on the XY manually is what I did. So I just moved it to a spot and then clicked the button to set the XY, and then I did set the Z on that one with the touch plate. So I was like, oh, close enough. Like I'll use the touch plate later for the XY stuff or whatever later on. Once I get more familiar with it. But yeah, it was definitely, for the Z height, is nice and smooth and easy to do. It's very, very clean and easy to do on that nice big pendant. So that worked out nice.
Yeah.
And then the other issue that I ran into is just something that happens with T-track, was screwing in that T-track just enough that it grabs the nut that slides into the T-track, but not so far, and going through and like tightening down all the screws, and then the last one it's just spinning and you're like, oh man, that one fell off. So now I gotta loosen everything, scooch it out, put it back on, and then put it back in. So that did happen to me a couple of times.
Yeah, luckily once you put it on there, you're not moving it for a long time. But yeah, it is a pain every time you have to do it.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge when I did that. And originally I had set the distance from the edge of the bed to the first MDF piece is the width of one of those MDF pieces, so I just used that as a general reference. And then I realized it was okay for the back part of the bed, but then when I brought the spindle forward, I realized that it couldn't reach all the way. So I was like, oh, I got to scoot this forward because of how it sits on the gantry. It's kind of back a little bit. So
right, because your bed is larger than your travel area. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I didn't account for that little extra bit of space for it to be going over. So that was a relatively easy fix. That wasn't super hard. So, and then we have been doing a lot of yard work here recently. So
that time of year.
Yeah. So we have been seeding and reseeding our backyard. So we're filling in all of the spots where where grass wasn't taking, or where like the dogs were like running around and then they like stop, change directions, and their paws just like dig into the mud and just tear stuff up. So I reseeded over that because I've done that once. I can't remember when it was that I did that the first time. And then the spots where it didn't take this original time, I did it again. And then I did it on our front side yard where we took that stump out, because we're grassing in that area. So then we can move the fence and make that kind of part of the backyard. So I also had to make sure that my sprinklers covered that area as well, so it actually got watered and everything. So my method was, so I get this like 50-pound bag of fescue seeds that's like, it's got like the little coating on it or whatever with the nutrients from Tractor Supply. So I spread that out across the area, and then I got a bunch of super duper cheap soil from Ace. I mean, you can get it anywhere they sell soil, because if they have broken bags, they have to discount those because it can like mold and stuff if the bags are broken. So you get what would normally be like $12 or $13 like bags of garden soil for like $1 a piece, because they like super discount them because they just want to get rid of them. So I got a bunch of bags of soil for like, $10 to go over top of that seed. And then we just sprinkled some grass seed over top that as well to kind of help retain in some of the moisture. So, yeah, if you're doing garden beds or anything like that, there's a pro tip to save you some money on filling that with soil so that you can still get like the good stuff without spending a crap ton of money on the soil itself. And for the most part, it's usually fine. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of like growth or algae or stuff in there, because if the bag breaks and water gets in and it gets that fertilizer that's in there, it'll kind of start growing the like that like algae and whatever. But for the most part, it's good stuff. And then we set up our garden area as well, because I can't remember if I told you that one of our garden beds basically broke and we had to take it apart. Did I tell you that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so we had that, and so how we're filling it in for the time being is we some of the cat litter that we had gotten comes in these like buckets that are like, I think they're the equivalent of like a 3-gallon bucket or something like that. And so we plant some stuff on there, drill some holes in the bottom for drainage, and then we can move the buckets around if we need to get more sunlight or whatever. And so we've got some tomatoes and green beans and stuff, and those and some of the existing garden beds that are still all right. So I'll eventually make more garden beds, but we need to we're going to get like a chain link fence for the garden area eventually, because right now we're still using the like pallet fence that we made for reseeding the lawn and keeping the dogs in certain areas. And then I did do a bunch of 3D printing to prep for our swim meet where my son swims, and then we also sell 3D prints on the side. So I did plenty of articulated fidgets and, at my wife's request, consolidate down what I had so we wouldn't have so much stuff in the car when we brought it over. And I did pretty darn well on that one, but I'll talk more about that in the what we're selling section.
Well, with that note,
Help is on the way, dear!
so what didn't go well this week for you?
So one interesting thing that I did when I was laser engraving is that in Lightburn, cropping an image is kind of, there's not like a true like crop. It's like a combine a box over top of the image and then merge it or combine it. And one of the times when I did it, I did one of the Boolean operations where it was like, can't remember which one it was, but when it did it, what it did was it did a reverse of the image so that it would laser everything except for the lines. And it was a fortunate thing that I was just doing the test on that one, because when it started and it was like, this is lasering more than normal on this image. And then when I realized what it was actually doing, I was like, I'll just let this finish and kind of see how it looks, to see if it looks better as a reverse. But the line thickness would have needed to have been a lot more to make that worthwhile, because the line detail was not, there wasn't really that much left to be able to actually see anything very well. And then the other weird thing that I had with the laser engraver was, some of my outlets in the basement shop are connected to the lights. So if I flip on the lights, it turns those outlets on, and vice versa of turning it off. And so the laser is hooked into those lights. And there was one time the laser wasn't running and I didn't shut it off in like mid cut. But I think I did like a little blip thing where it's like I turned it off and on really quick or something like that. And for whatever reason, it like caused an issue with the power brick that goes to USB-C to the actual laser unit itself. So like it didn't have enough power to turn on the laser. But when I connected the USB-C from that to a different power source, like it worked just fine. So I had to like pull the brick out of the actual outlet, let it like dissipate or whatever, and then plug it back in. And then it was okay after that. But it was just weird that a little blip like that caused an issue on the power brick. And then one other issue that I ran into. So when I was filming the work that I was doing on the CNC with the spoil board, it was fairly warm in the garage space, and it's not temperature humidity controlled at all. And so my phones were actually overheating and stopped recording partway through of some of the stuff. So I didn't have as much footage as I had wanted during that. But it was just a interesting reminder that sometimes those phones can get hot enough to need to stop and cool down before they can actually record. Or so that was interesting. So I'm like, oh, this might make it a little bit more challenging to record stuff in the future with the CNC and the garage shop. So it's like, I might have to do more stuff with the garage door open to keep airflow going. And then the other thing that I had with the CNC was that, so I didn't have dust collection set up, and with black MDF, you could imagine how that ended up in the shop. It just looked like a black sand beach after the fact. It's like, I knew that I needed to get some dust collection set up, but I just didn't have the time to do that. So eventually I'll get a dust boot on the CNC, but I made quite a bit of a little mess off that. It's all coated right now, but that's fine. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff that I had that was broken or I had issues with. How about you?
I mean, my legs were cut on, so like, I didn't do a lot in the shop to basically make it, anything failed, quote unquote, this week. So, I will give you a quick little kind of funny story. So this morning I was outside in the backyard before it got hot today, and I was finishing up putting up some lights around the fence that we had got. And as I'm walking around listening to my book in my headset and just, walking around, and all of a sudden I see something out of the corner of my eye, and I look down. And mind you, I've been out here for an hour, and I was out the night before too. And so this definitely happened overnight. I look down, there is a crow that has been like brutally murdered right next to my foot. And like, it is so much like it has been splayed open. Its guts have been torn out everywhere. It looks like a ritual has happened to this damn crow. So I assume a cat got to it or something, but I screamed very loudly because it caught me off guard. I'm surprised somebody didn't come knocking on the door going, "What's going on?" Because it was very loud. And then I looked very cautiously around to make sure that there weren't any other crows, because crows.
So you were counting crows.
Well, yeah. I very quickly got a bucket. I scooped all the junk into the bucket, and then I put some dirt on top of it, and then quickly took it to the trash. Luckily, it's trash day, so it's going out right away.
That's good.
But I was watching to make sure there were no crows around, because crows have been documented to hold grudges if they assume that you are responsible for a death of one of their, and they've a university in Washington State up in Seattle did a mask. They had a specific rubber mask that they put somebody in, and they attacked crows with a water gun over and over again. And they documented for the next 5 years, anytime somebody came with that mask out, the crows would run away from that mask, even though it's like a 2 generations down the line. Like the original crows aren't there. Like they passed down that information. They will hold grudges forever. Look this up. It's a really interesting study. But I just had watched during my downtime, I watched a YouTube video about crows and how smart they are. And they mentioned that study and stuff. And so, yeah, so I'm looking around like, oh no, I'm about to get bad luck for the next 5 years, as crows are going to try and murder me in my backyard because they think I did this.
Murdered by a murder of crows.
So luckily I did not see a crow other than the dead one. So yeah, yeah, it was pretty disgusting though. I was like, oh, maybe I should post this and take a picture and I'm like, no, that's going to get me flagged for something, because it was a murder scene.
Yeah.
But with just one crow. So yeah. Anyways, on to what we're selling.
The price is wrong, bitch.
I thought he said the price is wrong, Bob.
No, he does not.
Oh, I could have swore that was. Oh well, Mandela.
Maybe
effect.
that was the censored on television.
Oh yeah,
version.
that's probably what it was.
But no, in the movie, that's what he says. Anyway, so selling. So I've been off for a couple of weeks in that time, but right before I left, I had the big UFO fest. So I haven't got to tell you guys kind of how that went. So overall, very quick story. It went really, really well. Now, that said, Friday, it's a 2-day event. It's Friday and Saturday. Funny enough, we left so that we would get down there half an hour before setup time, and then so we could have lunch and then do setup. My wife, because we drove both cars, she was leading. I think her GPS needed an update or something, because she kept missing the turn where the GPS was telling us to turn. And she's like, it told me it didn't need to turn yet. And then it would like reroute again. So we added an extra half hour onto the trip. And so we didn't get to eat lunch because we needed to set up. But Friday, unfortunately, was very wet. It was very windy and it was very cold. So it was a very slow day. And you could tell the people that were there purchasing were like all of the regulars, like everybody who normally comes out for this event. Yeah. And because of that, I made what I would normally make on that Friday, but I was worried then about Saturday. If they did all of their shopping already, what was Saturday going to look like? Because Saturday's forecast was the same. And so that was really, I was really worried about it. Saturday morning, we get there. And the first 2 hours were a little cool and damp. It wasn't raining, and the rain held off all day. Luckily, actually, after noon, we started getting some sun breaks, and it was a little warmer. So the first 2 hours before the parade, it was super slow, and I was freaking out. I was like, this is going to suck. I'm not going to even make money. Like, I'm going to be in the negative for this. Like, it's going to be horrible. And then the 6 hours after the parade were insane. So last year I made just around 3,000 for that weekend. I ended up making about 4,500 this year. So 1,500 more. So it was the first event I've had in about a year that has done better year over year, which surprised me with the economy and everything. But I had lots of sales. I even did a wholesale order. There was an author that was selling his sci-fi book at a couple of booths down from me, and he came down and he liked my wooden bookmarks, so he ordered 100 on the spot with his logo on them. So I did a wholesale order for those, and I had a couple other people take cards as normal to reach out to me later. Funny enough, I had made all of these UFOs ahead of time, the UFO lights, and my biggest feedback the last 2 years was because my lights, the big size, are $100, and everybody complains that that's too expensive for the lamp. I'm like, okay, well, I'll make a smaller version this year, and I'll make it $60. It'll be half the price, but because again, costs and everything, it's going to be 60. It's not going to be 50.
Yeah.
I only sold one of those, and I almost sold out of all the big ones. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I sold all of the floating. I had made 4 floating UFOs, which are $300 a piece, and I sold all of those. Nice. And so, like, it made me laugh that people were actually making large purchases this year, which was great. But so again, we'll go back. I mean, cost on that for people that are interested, it's $275 for the booth fee, and then it was about $240 for the hotel for the night, because I'm not leaving at 9 p.m. and coming back at 6 a.m. the next morning with a 2-hour drive both ways. So so we do a hotel.
Maybe when you were younger.
maybe. Yeah, I'm going to be 40 this year, and I'm doing things to easier. So anyways, so that went really, really well. I was super happy. And I've got that wholesale order now that I need to complete. And I'll probably talk about this a little bit more next week, but I do have an opportunity for another retail store too, but I'm going to be meeting with them next week. So I'll talk more about it next week.
Cool.
What about you?
So one thing that I had mentioned this when I recorded when it was just me and Jeff about a table clear coating that a client had wanted for it was an interior designer, so it's for their end client. And so I hadn't looked at it when I had brought it up last, but I had since talked with them and actually reviewed the images, and for the amount of wear and tear that they were seeing and the fact that they wanted something that was more durable, I passed on it. Because to me it looked like the bigger scratches that I could see. I mean, they looked like claw scratches from like animals. So either that or like, they happen to have like a couple pieces of like sandy something or another that got underneath something and then it got moved and then it got scratched that way. But anyway, the way I looked at it, and I was like, the amount of durability I could add on this via a clear coat of what I'm capable of doing is not going to give them the amount of protection that they want. And if I were to do that, I would have more questions coming back. So I referred it to someone else that I know that has like a spray booth for like conference sized tables. Cause I was like, because they didn't want it refinished. They just wanted like a clear coat added to it. And I was like, I think the best bet for this is going to be applying a clear coat of whatever is going to like chemically bond to that existing finish layer. And a spray finish is probably going to be the easiest way to do that, I would imagine. I could have taken it and done some type of like brush on refinishing on there, but any type of film finish that's like brush on with sanding and whatnot in between coats, I'm just not super interested in. Especially it was a bigger table, and it was just like, I would probably underbid it as well with the amount of like transportation that it would need, and it would probably end up being more expensive that way anyway. So that's why I just handed it off to someone else, because like it's just not worth the headache for me. So that was one thing that I had. And then I think I had mentioned that we had our first swim meet with my son, and we sold 3D prints of that. And my wife had been kind of apprehensive about it because of like the extra time that it takes and bringing stuff and shoving it in the car. So I did a lot of work consolidating down what I needed to bring and saying yes and no to certain things. And I ended up taking maybe like 3 to 5 of each item that I actually had. There's a lot of keychains and articulating stuff, because those are the things that sell a lot there with those kids. And it ended up being really good for that. So for an event that we were going to go to anyway, making around like $300 worth while we were there, where you don't have any like booth fee or anything like that, is pretty good in my book. And I've got kids that'll come up at future events anyway, because I had some other lady who wanted to buy the like long dragons that I sell for the next time that she's at a meet this upcoming week. And I was hesitant to bring those like bigger, like higher dollar items, because in the past years, it was kind of in the past year, it was a little bit hit or miss, because sometimes it's like kids have their like allowance money or whatever, and they only have like a few bucks or something like that, and they just want to get something to get something. So I didn't do a whole lot of that, just because like I didn't do earrings, I didn't do croc gibbets or anything like that, just because I was like, for the amount of space that they take up and the amount of work that they are, like, they just don't sell that well. So I decided not to bring those, and I packed everything in Ziploc bags, and that's how I kind of kept track of what was where. So then I only had one thing out on the table, so I didn't bring multiple tables or anything like that. So that also saved space. And so like it was like one tote worth of stuff that I actually brought. So considering how much I actually brought, like we did pretty well on that. And I was, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised with some of the bigger items getting sold. But one thing that I'm going to be cautious of, which is what you would kind of mentioned earlier, is like when you have regulars, if they've already purchased this stuff, like, are they going to purchase that again the next week? If that same person is there, because like maybe they like, because if it's kids and it's their money, maybe they saved up all year and they had, you know, $20 to get something or whatnot. So I don't know what their spend limit is on some of that stuff. And of course, not all the same kids come to all the same swim meets. So there'll be some overlap there, but I'm curious to see if that trend holds, because I don't think I did that well for any of the meets last year, just like sales number wise, because it was like I was just experimenting and figuring out what worked back then. So it did help having some higher dollar items there. I did not have the Charizard there because that one took up a lot of space. But I still got plenty of interest from the kids, so I didn't need that as my like showstopper, bring people in and attract them. So overall did well, because it's like I said, like there's basically no cost into it, and I was already going to be there anyway, so it's basically just revenue on top of it. And then I had someone reach out to me just in passing comment about refinishing a cedar chest. So we'll see in what condition that is and how easy it'll actually look to refinish if I actually take that one on. So to me, refinishing work I'm very cautious about it in general. So we'll just see how that stuff all plays out. So that's all I got.
Sorry, I'm trying to get there. Come on, computer. You can do it. I had to change one of my watching because I noticed you had it already on your list, even though I entered mine first. So I changed it. So my first one is from Instagram, Alyssa Olson, Sweet Angel. Alyssa is actually an old high school friend of mine who also is into woodworking. She's an architect and woodworker. Does mostly links private stuff and doesn't do a ton on on out there, but she's got some really cool stuff, and she actually just made some puzzles that are like name puzzles. And she got on the local news and was like, it was a segment about how do you do like DIY woodworking at home, and it was for kids names puzzles, which were pretty cool. So
all right, so my first one is Ellen Wood Designs. Ellen is spelled Ellyn on that one. And they made this really beautiful set of cabinet doors. It's got this tree where, it's the kind of image where it's got the leaves and then the trunk, and then you can see the roots underneath it. And then you've got a waterfall coming out underneath. So it reminds me of like a Lord of the Rings kind of aesthetic off of it for that intarsia. And it makes me think of which is it, Minas Tirith, where they have the black shields with like the white tree on it. I think that's the one.
I don't know.
It reminded me a little bit of that. My Lord of the Rings knowledge is not as much as Stephen Colbert, so I could be wrong on that. But anyway, that was a lot of fun to see. It was really good scenery.
Nice. My next one is Mark Spagnolo, the Wood Whisperer, over on YouTube, posted a video of his experience with the new Craig, quote unquote, domino killer that he saw over at the Woodcraft show. Now, did you and Jeff talk about this last week at all?
It might have been in passing, because
Okay.
It would have been pretty fresh if it had come out. But I know that because I believe that they call it the Edge, right?
The Edge, yep.
Because the whole like spiel around this is that since I think it's the original domino patent is expiring, there's stuff that they can take from the original domino and be able to actually use. Which we'll see, because this is how they always do stuff with patents, is they always repatent with additional features. So it's the same thing with like SawStop, where it's like, oh, like the original patent is going to expire, but they have tweaks and improvements that are included on subsequent patents that keep someone at bay from having the latest version of whatever that company has made. So it would probably be like buying an original domino and comparing it to what they are today.
So
with the caveat of like, I don't know what their like manufacturing tolerances are and like how high end of a machine it is, because even if you have like the schematic drawings on stuff, you still got to execute and manufacture it. And so that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, and I would recommend going and watching this video. Mark does a good deep dive in there. So not to contradict a little bit of what you said. So it looks like they're not continuing on with a separate patent, at least so far, because Craig has actually gone and patented their changes and things. So even though they don't have an official release date yet. But what I liked of what Mark had said, because he reviewed his original domino that he bought 20 years ago and a new domino. And like, other than where the dust collector hose is and the power cable, there really isn't any difference. Like, they are almost identical machines. Yeah. They haven't really made any changes to this thing. So that was really interesting to see. But what I liked what Mark said about this is he doesn't agree with the comment of quote unquote, domino killer. Nobody's who owns a domino is going to sell their domino and buy this Craig thing, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. Though he's the first person I've seen describe it as a upgrade path for those who are currently using, say, dowel joinery, can now get into the loose mortise and tenon easier, and then it would be a stepping stone to then maybe upgrade to a domino down the line. If you want, some of those higher features that Festool will probably come out with. But he had a lot of good things to say about it. Not obviously doing a full work through of it yet, but I liked his take on it as far as where things stand now, what this one is, and what it isn't. So I thought it was really good. And then your next one was the one I had on my list that you stole from me.
We'll look at the timestamps of when it was actually shared on Instagram to the What You're Making account. We'll review the tapes on that. Anyway, so this next one is Astropola Woodworking. And so what they did was they made wooden knives with really figured material. So like curly maple and combined with walnut and all sorts of stuff. And of course it's not the stuff that you would need your like super duper sharp knife with. Like, you're probably not cutting tomatoes with this that are like paper thin, but something that requires an edge to cut but doesn't need like a insanely sharp edge. But they just look phenomenal, because like I'm always a sucker of the blending a lighter and a darker wood together, and there's a lot of that, and so I enjoyed that significantly.
Nice. And my last one is our good friend Chelsea over at Evergreen Daydreams. She posted another amazing wall art. This one had an airplane in it, mountains, an evergreen forest, river, and a cute little wolf with a little nose that, when she showed like the comparison to her thumbnail and the nose, like the nose was like a half the size of her thumbnail. Like, her details are so freaking incredible. It blows my mind. So just another masterpiece that she continues to knock out over and over. So
wonderful.
Yeah. With that note,
you're still a failure.
So tonight's main topic is all about failed products or services that you offer. When do you call it quits? When do you determine something has failed? When do you say
you're still a failure?
So Why don't I kick it off here? My products, as I've talked about before, a lot of my products I bring to my markets as my market testing. I use craft fairs and Saturday markets as product testing. So I usually will make a prototype of a project that I'm making of a new product line, quote unquote. And I'll bring them to markets, and I will bring like 5 and get early comments from people. What do they think about them? Do they immediately sell? Do they not sell? You know what? And I test prices that way too. And then once I kind of get to my finalized design, I'll then do what I call a large production run where I'll make 50 to 100 of them.
Mhm.
And then I see how long that takes to sell through in the same like category of other products that it fits in. So like if I'm doing whiskey smokers and all of a sudden I'm doing coffee scoops at the same time, you know how long does it take my coffee scoops to sell compared to my whiskey smokers? Because they're in the same kind of product area and price point and profit line. And so I want to see if that matches or succeeds or doesn't. Or how that goes. And so my first level is, okay, once I've started selling through, I let that production run sit for 4 or 5 markets. And if I don't get any, and that for me, that's usually like 2 months, right? And if I don't get really any movement on it, then for me, it means, all right, I'm going to adjust the price and see if I can bring the price down if it's not moving, or if it's moving too quickly, see if I can bring the price up. But specifically, we're talking about failure. So if it's not moving, bring the price down a little bit, and then I'll give that a couple of markets, so another month. And if that still doesn't work, then I'll kind of go back to the drawing board of, okay, what can I add for more features to this, or what can I streamline it with the feedback that I've gotten over the last couple of months. And then I'll give it another month of a kind of a couple of prototypes of that to see how it does. And if it still doesn't work, then I call it quits. I don't want to spend forever on something, and I don't want to have a ton of product that is just sitting around consistently. So that's why I usually do that testing section first before going in the production run. But if it then doesn't move after the production run, I still then will go through pricing. And I have a couple of examples of that. One is my wooden notebooks. My prototypes did amazing. I sold through them real quick, and I got a large order for them on something, or for a corporate order. So I was like, wow, there's a market for these. So I'm going to go sell a whole bunch of them, and I'm going to make a whole bunch of them. So I made like 300 notebooks, and it took me a year to sell maybe 25 of them. And I was pricing. And so at this point, like I'm trying to just get rid of them, and I'm selling them basically at cost, because I just need to get rid of them at this point and recoup that money. And I will never do that again. But so what failed in my system, I think I had that one, like a couple of prototypes sell well, and I had a good order. So I thought there was a huge market, but really that was the only market that was available for it.
Right. Yeah. It didn't extrapolate over the rest of your markets. It didn't translate.
Right.
Which can happen.
And so bread bow knives are another example of that. They sell really well, but I have to price them so low for them to sell well, that they're not, because of how much waste of material there is due to the design. There isn't enough money to cover the cost of the material and the time it takes to route all of the edges and hand sand them and everything else. So they sell really well at like $20, but I can't make enough money at $20 per knife to make it worthwhile. It needs to be closer to 30 to 35, and people just won't buy them. So yeah, so that's kind of my take on it. What about you? How do you look at it?
So I'll kind of go with summarizing what you had put there before, because one thing that you did really well with that was like you have a clear definition of like how long you're willing to try something, and you actually have a line in the sand where it's like, here is what it means to be successful or not successful for me. Because that's one thing that a lot of times people may not commit to, is like they don't put a guardrail on it of any kind of like, I need to stop this and try something different by a certain amount of time. And of course that can change for everyone.
Or if you're starting out, you may not know what that line in the sand is yet, which is why I would never suggest going to a production run to begin with. Only make those small prototypes or a few at a time, and then start getting, your feet wet in the business.
Yeah. And when I was going to ask, with some of those prototypes that you did with the notebook, were those prototypes, were the unit economics there where they were profitable per unit, or were they closer to break even?
They were somewhere in between. My retail price, once I sold, and made the big production order, I was like, okay, I could actually price these at $30 a notebook and make a good decent price. And now they're priced at $15 a notebook because that's how much it costs. And so when I first sold the prototypes, I was selling them at 25, and they sold really well. But again, that was just that one bit. I've tried 25, I've tried 20. I'm at 15 now just to get rid of them. So
yeah, because especially with the pricing, if you're able to at least start off with something that's experimental, that's at least break even, that you can reduce the unit cost down by batching it out. Because if you start off with like the most amount of margin that you can and you're like barely getting break even, like that's a recipe for disaster. Because there's like no wiggle room there unless you increase the price or you figure a different way to like make it faster with like less detail. But anyway, with where I was going with this was kind of like defining what makes something successful versus not successful in a couple of scenarios, kind of like what you had mentioned. Because one that comes to mind is like product market fit. And what I mean by that is the unit that is being made, does it match up with the people that you have access to? Because you might make something that is really cool. Like, for example, like you make a bunch of UFO stuff, but would that necessarily sell in Nebraska? It may not, because the same type of person may not be there. So it might be a really good product, but because of the market that I'm in, it may not have as much interest. And the same thing goes for like stuff that is like laser engraved, that's like in the shape of whatever state that you reside in. Like a Nebraska shaped engraved on something is not going to sell in your region because there's probably not very many people. Yeah, I know. Nobody
wants shapes of Nebraska and Oregon and Washington. What?
Exactly. So I mean, it's kind of common sense stuff, but it merits discussing it. Because like I know for me, like with like the swim meets, like I know it's like a bunch of kids, and so for me it's more about like toys, fidgets, something that moves, as opposed to like useful kitchen gadgets or something that's more like functional. Like that type of stuff I know doesn't really sell for that demographic that I have access to. It's the same thing for the farmers market that I go to, which is starting up here this week, where I had some stuff in the past that was more like functional, where it was like, oh, these little cool like bread clip things or whatever that look really fun and they're functional. Like I've maybe sold like one or two, but it's a much harder sell on something like that for me than it is for something that's like a toy or something that's fun or has like, someone's favorite animal or something on there. So yeah, knowing what your market and those type of people are, because like to kind of go on your example of like having several markets, like I'm guessing that the type of person that are at those markets, like that demographic is similar, because you wouldn't take something across like and test it across 5 markets that you had if they're all different people or different types of people, because it wouldn't be a good experiment for that user base. Right. And then so like product market kind of fit stuff. We kind of already talked about something that doesn't really have good margins on it, or you might have something else that sells just fine, and has a better margin on it, and so it doesn't make sense to do that. Like you were saying with the knives, where it's like you've got other stuff that you like. There's only so much stuff that you can make with your throughput and capacity, so you're not gonna make something that has lower margins on it, you're going to want to do something that has the higher margins on it. So you're substituting. It's like, well, if I'm going to make something, I would rather make the more expensive item that I know that I can sell. Which if you're starting fresh is kind of hard to know, but I mean, you can experiment on those. And then this kind of ties into that one a little bit as well. With pricing is what the competition looks like for you. Because if it's something that people can easily get at, you know, Walmart or another store, or like a similar item that's a lot cheaper because it can be mass produced, then you may not be able to hit the price point that it needs to be, because someone else makes it cheaper, and it's more about the price than it is the added craftsmanship. Because like sometimes people will like the added craftsmanship on something and the personalization, and other times they may not care quite as much, and it's more about something that's cheaper. So you don't want to compete with Walmart on those types of things, because you'll always lose. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there was any other stuff on there. But yeah, looking at a few examples of stuff that I have tried, it's very similar, where I do this similar thing that you're talking about, where you'll do a few units, and then if you see a little bit of success, then you will try and make them either more affordable cost-wise, so that you can have a larger margin, or you can go off of some of the feedback and potentially take off some of the features of something. Because like if there's extra details where it's like, hey, like for example, with these like plaque things that I did, like I didn't route the edges on these because I didn't feel like I needed to, like that was an extra step. So it's like, do these kids care about, I mean, I'm not actually selling them to them, but it's like, does that matter that it's just a square edge versus a round over profile or something like that? Because if the round over doesn't matter and you don't need to add it, and it's easier for you to produce something else, and that doesn't matter, then you can literally, well, that wouldn't be cutting corners because you'd be taking the round over off, so you would have corners. Anyway,
you'd be streamlining your production.
There you go. So sometimes it's dialing in what attributes people actually want, because sometimes you can take away some of the features that don't contribute. Because like, if, for example, some of your UFO lamps, if you had, for example, like a bunch of foliage around it that's around where like the cow gets sucked up or whatever, and say, for example, like adding that foliage and gluing it in there was like the most time intensive operation on there, but people don't care about that. They can only care about like the cow that's like in midair. Then you wouldn't necessarily need to have the like grass stuff behind there or whatever. That's just like an example of like, does it accomplish the job, which can be a little bit of an open-ended question when it's more style and aesthetic. And one thing that I would say, because I think, oh yeah, you did have the story about people requesting like a cheaper version of something. One thing that I do encourage people to consider when they're getting feedback from people is consider, has this person bought something from me before?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's someone who's bought something from me before, their opinion weighs a lot more than someone who has never bought something and is making a suggestion. Because that person has like, they voted with their money and said that something that you made is worthwhile. And so their opinion to me means a lot more because they're much more likely to actually buy it. And you might just get like a random passerby who, says, oh, this would be cooler if XYZ. And it's like, well, people get a lot of suggestions. It could be a good one. It could be a bad one. It's hard to know because you don't know if that person fits within your demographic. The other thing too is considering with those products, we had mentioned about, or I had mentioned about understanding what that market is, like what they actually do like, so you can provide something that fits with them. So if you are at an event or something like that, one thing that I have come to notice, and usually people come up and they ask about, hey, do you have this? Like, if someone has tattoos of something, like if they have tattoos of Ninja Turtles or something like that, to me that's a signal like they really like that franchise. Or if they have, like, you know, tattoos of horses or something like that, like that's their favorite animal, they're more likely to get something like that because they've already committed to a tattoo and spent money on that. Like, if you see people around, like, that's one indicator that's not a, like, super apparent thing if you're not looking for it. So that's just trying to size up people and understand, because it's like, oh, do you have a lot of, you know, married couples with kids that are pushing around strollers? What's going to work for them versus, oh, this is, you know, middle-aged couples who don't have kids, or like, what are they gonna be bring to it? Because like, if my farmer's market didn't have kids at it, what I would be selling would probably be a lot different. But I do see a lot of families, and so, you know, the kids are the ones who are wanting something. Or, you know, it's for example, like, I see a lot of grandparents with their grandkids and them wanting to get something for their grandkids. So it's like, okay, they want to get something for their grandkids there. Like, what does a grandparent want to get for their grandkid? And, you know, what's their, like, budget that they're wanting to spend on something like that? So that also can help you with figuring out, like, price wise, what can I even offer? Like, what am I working with here? Like, is $10 enough? Is $50, you know, out of the question? Is $100 for an item out of the question? I know for me, like, generally speaking, like, anything that's under 20 is generally pretty plausible, because it's someone can have just a 20 with them. Like, I do cashless payments as well. But I know that, at least for me and in my market, like, sub $20 things are pretty safe and very quick, easy sells for me to do. And I also do a lot of keychains, because for me, with 3D printing, keychains are flat, so they don't use a whole lot of material, and they're relatively quick to print, but they can also be very personalized in the sense that, like, there's enough detail there that it can be something very specific to that person, that they have enough of a attachment or a want to it that they want to get that. And I only price my keychains at like $5 a pop, which is not a lot, but because I think I used to price them at like maybe $3 or $4 last year, but then I upped the price because I saw that, like, they were still moving. So it's like, okay, I'm leaving a little bit of money on the table by doing that. And that also allowed me to expand and have something that was like a little bit more detailed in there. That just means that, like, some of my keychains have a little bit better margin than others, just depending on print time and how much filament that they use. So that one is one that sells a lot. And it's also something that, like, people come up and they will look through that. Because sometimes you might have like a loss leader that, like, attracts attention. We can't all do that. Like, we're not all like, you know, Costco with the $1.50 hot dog or whatever, or the rotisserie chicken that they sell. But sometimes you have that item that's there that, like, it may not be something that you produce a lot of, but sometimes it generates a lot of attention and gets people to come to your booth, and then they buy something else. Or you might have something that's complementary that is, like, say it's like a set, and it's like, well, one piece of it has a really good margin, but the other piece that they get doesn't have quite as good margin, but they always buy them together, or something like that. Like, for example, I haven't really done this, but, like, I do sell like the longer dragon, and then I do have like dragon eggs. So if it was something where it's like people wouldn't buy them unless they had the dragon and the dragon egg, like if the dragon was a good margin, but the egg was break even, like you might still make the dragon egg just because of the fact that you would still sell the dragon and that has good, margin on it. So sometimes that scenario can pop up. It's not quite as common of one, but that can happen.
Yep.
Have I bored you enough to death?
No, I don't have anything else to add to it. I was debating if I had anything else. I don't. Do you?
I'm sure I'll think of something after the fact just because there's a lot of things to do. But, I mean, some of it is just experimenting and trying. So I would say starting off with knowing, or at least making a few assumptions on the type of people that you're going to have access to, whether it's at physical markets or online or, through your social media page. Starting with some assumptions on like what that person looks like if you were to describe that like stereotypical person that like comes to that shop, like, how would you describe them? Do they like, it's a little bit, it's not like, it's profiling in the sense of not like discrimination, but profiling in the sense of getting an idea of what that typical person is like. And when you see them, it's like, oh yeah, like for example, I mentioned the like grandparent and grandkids. So when I see grandparent and grandkids coming by, it's like, okay, I've understood a couple of things that they get. And sometimes if they've got multiple grandkids, they all want to have the same thing, but maybe slightly different. So like, for example, they might all want the same dragon, but in different colors. So it's the same because, you don't want to have fights between the kids about like, well, you got that, but I didn't get this. So that's kind of the case for if you've got an item having multiple colors, of that behooves you to have that as an option. Cause for some, like for some people, they're like, oh yeah, like color doesn't really matter for the, color of the 3D print on this. It's all the same. But that can give you some options for that specific use case.
Yeah.
So.
Well, on that note.
Good news, everyone.
What do you have for news?
The first one, and I don't know if they have pushed this super hard, but I find it really interesting. So Bamboo recently announced the release of their model, which is the A2L. So this is basically the big brother of the A1 printer, which I have several of, which has the it's a bed slinger style 3D printer. And the thing that is interesting about this A2L is that this now has the same larger print profile of some of the newer, more expensive printers they've come out with. Because now you are able to share some of those print beds in between some of those other units again. So, because one of the things that I liked about the A1 and the P1S when I originally got those is that I can interchangeably use the print plates because they're the same size. So it allows you to condense down some of the parts that you have. And so with them expanding to this larger size with the bed slinger profile, I think that helps a little bit with having a little bit of overlap on some of those parts. Because there is a little bit, there's still that difference of like they have different nozzles and stuff like that, but it is nice to have that larger print profile on a much more affordable machine and a much more affordable format. Because if I remember right, I want to say if the printer itself was it like $600 or $700? Let me check real quick.
Is it? Yeah, well, no. What's interesting is it also has real-time adaptive vibration compensation, which is what a lot of the bigger ones do too. So yeah, they brought a lot of their pro components onto it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So I think let's see. Oh, wow. So for the A2L, just the unit is $469. Nice. The combo unit, which gets the AMS light, where you get the 4 different colors, that is $569. So that is, I would say, a pretty good deal. I don't have any insight on this machine or any experience with it, so I can't say, like, for any add-on features other than the build volume, I haven't really went over any, like, early adopter or any reviews that anyone who has gotten early access to the machine has. So,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
I think I think it'll probably be a pretty good one.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that print bed size is going to be pretty substantial.
Yeah, because especially
and so
yeah, because one thing that I do is, like, your economics for when you're 3D printing really boils down to how many print beds, like how much you can get in a print bed for a certain duration of time. Like that's your that's your unit economics that you can do, because that's how I reduce the cost of a print, especially a multicolor print, is by cramming the bed full of it, so that when it does the material change, it only has to do that once, regardless you have 1 or 10 models on there. So you spread that time cost over multiple units, and so your per unit time it takes to print is a lot less. So you can get those unit economics down. If you have a larger print bed, you can make that even more cost reduction on that sense of things. And also, obviously, the larger prints that you can do on there, if you so need that. But in my mind, it's more the, like, being able to do more units on that bed. Because for the most part, like, the only thing that I can think of that you would do is like a single model that doesn't do well with the existing ones is like some of the helmets and stuff. Because right now it can be a little bit tough to fit a full, like, you can do it, but you're like at the very max limitation size wise to be able to print something that's like helmet size. Whereas this, like, it would be super duper easy to do all one single helmet,
right,
without needing assembly. So anyway, that's what I got on that unit.
Other news. So if you're listening to this live on the 10th, or if you're one of our patrons and are listening to it early, tomorrow on June 11th, I'm going to be on the CNC show with Andy Bird. So that's live on Instagram on the 11th at 9 a.m. Pacific time.
And you've been on there before, right?
Eastern. Yep. I've been on there once before, so I'm looking forward to going back. We're going to talk about summer craft fairs. So it'll be a good time. But that's tomorrow, June 11th. Can't believe it's middle of June already.
I know. Time flies. Oh,
Time
real
does
quick. Since it is my anniversary, I have a quick story. So, so it's going to be our 14-year anniversary, and because I was looking through the little like milestone things, like which anniversary means what. I was like, oh, maybe I could build something if it's, something that kind of fits in with something that I can do. And what happened was, as I was looking at the list, I looked at the wrong row. So I thought that I was on the, what was it? I thought I was on the lace anniversary for the present. So I was one line off. So I'd already committed to getting something for my wife that was that, but it's actually 14-year is like the gold one. So it's like, oh, I kind of like screwed that up, but I paid enough attention to even look. But what I had gotten her was, she obviously loves Harry Potter, and she, like, her house is Slytherin. So what I did was because she's always got blankets. So I found a place that makes a Slytherin blanket, and got her name added onto that.
Cool.
Because one thing for her is that, like, whenever she went to like anywhere on like on vacation, she could never find like keychains that had her name on it. So like she likes stuff that has her name on it when she can find it, because shorthand she spells her name Alix. So that never really like showed up. So like she really likes stuff that she like can have her name on it. So anyway, that's what I went with, and I'm like, you know what? I had already ordered it. It's fine. I don't even know if I'll even mention the thing about the like the anniversary thing, because it's like, we'll just see. But anyway, so that's what I did. That's my fun little story for the anniversary thing that we've got today.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening, and just remember,
in case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night, night.